Hey, it's Alex here. Before we get started, I wanted to tell you that this episode of the New Stack Makers is part of our second season of the Tech Founder Odyssey. We're so excited about this series that we're doing with tech founders. We're going to hear from more founders as they share how they've launched their venture, what they've learned from their successes, and how the pitfalls along the way have helped shape the way they run their company. I'm very interested in how they came up with this idea. What were the challenges? Those are the kind of things you're going to hear in these stories. So I'm hosting the first episode, and then we'll be handing it off to the awesome Heather Jocelyn and awesome as well, Calling Call for the rest of season 2. We've got some great guests lined up, so please stay tuned. You're watching The New Stack Makers, a podcast made for people who develop, deploy, and manage at-scale software. For more conversations and articles, go to thenewstack.io. Okay, on with the show. Hey everyone, today we're talking with Edith Harbaugh, co-founder and CEO of LaunchDarkly, which focuses on feature management. Edith and co-founder John Kodumal started the company in 2014. We'll be asking Edith about the process of starting LaunchDarkly and how her journey has unfolded. I have a particular interest in the story I read about her endurance running and being ahead of the race, so to speak. So I'm curious on the comparison there. So welcome, Edith.
Yeah, it's great to be here. I love the New Stack. I feel like the readership really is our target market of developers, people who want to make software better.
Oh, that's wonderful to hear. Well, I was captivated a while back by this concept of feature flags. And I started thinking a lot about feature flags when I was reading about it. It's like there must be patterns for establishing feature flags. There must be now templates for feature flags. Actually, I think I listened to a podcast where there actually are. And there's all these different aspects to feature flags. Just for our audience, so just we get a grounding, can you tell us about what are feature flags and how it serves as a foundation for LaunchDarkly?
Yeah, happy to. So LaunchDarkly is the #1 feature management company. Our mission is to help all teams that build software to launch, measure, control software. And when we founded in 2014, it was from this basic idea that software was really hard. I'd been an engineer and a product manager. Releasing software is hard. You wonder whether you're building the right thing. Once you get it out to the market, it often is not quite right. And then you just run this huge risk of how do you fix things on the fly? So feature flagging was a technique that a lot of the smartest companies like Facebook, TripIt, where I was at, and Atlassian, where my co-founder were using. But there wasn't really an off-the-shelf product that helped software teams do it. So the kernel of LaunchDarkly, when we started in 2014, was to make this technique of feature flagging into a movement called feature management to allow everybody to build better software faster in a safer way.
I read an article that Tom Krazitz wrote, I believe, in Protocol about a problem I've heard a lot over the years. And it would be for a lot of this feedback I'd hear from marketing would go something like this. I don't know when we're going to release it. It's up to the dev team. Every time we want to release it, they say that it's not done. But we said we wanted to know when it was going to be done. And they said, well, if you really need to know, we can say April, but now it's not done. But then the other day, they just released it.
So I think what LaunchDarkly really allows companies to do, and that is such a common issue, is to break down features into however granular organization wants it, and allow a developer to push it out onto production, which sounds extremely scary, but a developer pushes it out off. So then you allow other people in the organization, whether they be marketing, product manager, to turn it on for different people at different times. So, for example, if we were running a release and we wanted somebody from the new stack to see it first, the marketing person could turn it on just for you, so they're in full
Right.
control.
That's like a feature that almost seems to come from a bit of like what I recall in the earlier days in consumer technologies, like where you could like hide a blog post, right? You know, so like only you could send it to someone, but they could only click that link when the link was published,
Yeah,
right?
so we do that at scale, and we allow
Mhm.
non-developers to control that, or develop.
Ah, so you've really wanted to be a company that allows you to be very valuable for the developer, but the non-developer seems to be that larger opportunity. How'd you discover that?
So I started off in engineering. I did a lot of releases, and then I was a product manager. And I think there's sometimes this unnecessary, unhealthy tension with what you just described of the developer wants to build, the marketing person wants to expose.
Mhm.
And what we allow is that we empower both parties to do that. So the developer could say, "Hey, I've built this." Uh, Marketing person, it's time for the 4 a.m. West Coast launch for the 7 a.m. East Coast press,
Mhm.
and you can control that,
Yeah.
which actually really makes both parties a lot happier.
Yeah, it does. And so, can you give us size of the company these days? Like how big is the company?
So we've had a lot of success. Again, when we started 2014, this was a pretty novel way to build software. What we've really done is allow companies all over the world to do it. So we have 4,000 plus customers, everything from Atlassian, which is an Australian company, to IBM, which is global, to Intuit, who've all kind of discovered this power.
Hmm. Hmm. How does it integrate? How does it fit with kind of approaches to continuous delivery, for example? And question of the day is about security. And so, how does feature management help with security in a continuous delivery context?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, when we started about 10 years ago, people were just getting up to speed about this idea of continuous delivery. The old way of building software was very waterfall oriented, where you did a year release with maybe like 6 months of development, 6 months of QA. And the issue with this style of release was that you often miss the market. Like if you're guessing what's going to happen a year from now, you're often very late. So continuous delivery was this idea really popularized by Jeff Humble and Dave Farley, that you could break stuff into smaller and smaller features and release very quickly, iteratively. The issue that a lot of orgs had with continuous delivery was this was extremely scary. Like the example that you gave at the top of the hour about
Yeah.
a developer just pushing out code whenever they want. It's not actually how organizations run.
Yeah.
They're like, I need to enable my salespeople. I might have users who need training. I need to line up my release notes. So how we fit into that world was we said developers could push code whenever they want, and we'll be this wrapper that allows the rest of the organization to control when it goes out. And then for your question about security, because that's that layer of authorization, you always know exactly who it is going to. So, for example, if you're a multinational company and you, for example, want stuff to go out to New Zealand but not to Australia, you can use LaunchDarkly as that layer to protect that.
So they act as a layer of authorization.
Yes. So a lot of our customers actually use us for that. Of it's very common to say, people in New York get this and not in New Jersey or vice versa. Particularly if you're in some sort of regulated industry.
I hung around Heavy Bit circa 2014, and there there was a bit of buzz in the office about this company, LaunchDarkly. I just thought I'd share that with you. There was uh, kind of a kind of a buzz going on about it. It's like, you gotta meet Edith. You gotta meet Edith.
I loved being part of HeavyBit. So HeavyBit was an incubator in downtown SF, and a lot of the companies were doing really innovative stuff,
Yeah.
like and it was a fun place to be because we could all exchange ideas.
Yeah.
And I realized in hindsight how fortunate we were to be in that.
Yeah, it was a neat community there that was fostered. I think it was the name of the space, it was the theme of the space itself, it was the people that it attracted, it was the right time. It was like the early days of like I don't want to say it's the early day of DevOps because I remember hearing the term DevOps circa 2007, and I think it was Adrian Bridgewater, and he said it was at the actually OSCON event in Portland, and I said, what is DevOps? He says it's a culture, man. He didn't say man, but he said it's a culture, you know, and um, and that was like to me, I was like, gosh, I'm trying to grok this, but it is a culture. So you entered, you were where were you in like that time? Where were you like around 2006 to 2007?
2006, 2007. Gosh, I got some patents from a long defunct company called Epicentric
Uh huh.
around deployment, around moving stuff between developer box to staging to production. And Epicentric got acquired by another company called Vignette,
Mm-hmm.
which was a very early web content management company.
Yeah.
So from that, I was meeting 2006, 2007. I was meeting with customers worldwide about all their content
Wow.
management problems.
You're traveling around the world talking to customers about content management.
I did. It was really fun. I got to hear all their problems about, Web 1.0, and at that time it was the transition to Web 2.0.
So you were like trying to talk about, were you trying to talk them out of XML?
I was more trying to talk them into Ajax,
Uh huh. Okay.
and I was more it was funny. So I'd say Web 1.0 was just getting stuff online at all. So this idea of
Yeah.
like, let's take a newspaper and put it online.
Yeah. Yeah.
A lot of the talks I had back then were around this idea that if you had users participate, that it could be a two-way street. Like, so Web 1.0 is just like a newspaper would put something up online.
Yeah.
Web 2.0 was this idea that, like, hey, if you were the Sun, which was a paper in the UK, you could host blogs and comments from your readers.
Ah,
Which now everybody's like, well, yeah, but at the time it was like something that
very, yeah.
it was seen as very novel. That it's like, hey, it's not just our authors, that people can actually comment on articles.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I remember that very well. I got hired to write a report on how newspapers were digitizing. This was in the 90s actually, but it was like I followed kind of how they were doing it. And like some of them were like sending CDs out, right? Like you could open the CD and you could flip the digital pages, and it just it just didn't relate. And it's funny if you kind of look at that concept because clearly you were kind of thinking you're showing like, hey, that's not quite the right way to think about your newspaper. You should be thinking about it in terms of like just that interaction. You know, it's interesting because there's a lot of analogies today. Like I was having a conversation with an old friend of mine over the weekend. I'm like, it's kind of like these, you know, the plant-based food world is kind of having kind of a little bit of a downturn. And I think it's partly because they're trying to sell them as burgers, right? It's like, but you're trying to sell something that you're never going to be able to compete with. You're never going to be able to compete with a hamburger, you know? Um, and it's time for something entirely new. And we don't really know what that it's something entirely new is.
I,
So yeah.
I do think there has been a continued wave from it just being a one-way street of people just pushing out content to the best content being a lot more participatory.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
but at the same time, like people still seeking out curated professional content.
Yeah. You went to Harvey Mudd
I did.
and you studied computer science and economics,
I actually got an engineering degree.
engineering degree.
And so I went to Harvey Mudd. which is at the time it had a graduating class of 130 people.
Wow. Is it just a tiny college? I mean, it's not very big today, is it?
It's a tiny college and it specializes in STEM. So you could get engineering,
Mm,
math, physics, biology, chemistry, or computer science.
mm.
But the other benefit it had, it was part of the Claremont colleges.
Oh.
So it was next to Pomona, Claremont McKenna, Pittsburgh and
Oh, neat.
Scripps, and Claremont grad. And so I realized in hindsight what a huge geek I was
Yeah.
because I was getting an engineering degree at Harvey Mudd.
Uh,
And I realized that I could also get an econ degree at the same time for the same amount of money
uh.
if I took basically a huge amount of classes every semester. Like so, I
Oh.
so
So you were totally geeking out. You were like in the library reading your economics books and like doing your programming.
it was more classical engineering degree. So I was in the lab, like doing centrifugal force studies.
Ah, gosh, okay, you're in the lab.
But
Nice.
but I realized in hindsight that everybody else's college experience was different than mine if they went to different school or like
Yeah, yeah.
uh, mine was how do I figure out how to cram as many classes into a semester?
Ah, really? Okay.
And I like and going down to Pomona College and asking professors to let me into their classes.
And so you would approach them? Would you like just knock on their office door and say, "Hi, I'm Edith and I want to be in your class"?
Yeah, pretty much. Like,
Yeah.
I actually, it's funny because I went to Claremont McKenna first because it's closer geographically. And I knocked on the doors. They said, our classes are just for our students. We can't let you in. Because you have to get an econ degree, you have to take a certain level of, you know,
Yeah.
uh, fundamental classes.
Prerequisites? Yeah.
And they're like, no, our fundamental courses are just for our students. And then I rode my bike a little bit further down to Pomona and I knocked on the door and I said, hey, I'm really interested in econ. Can I take the fundamental courses here? They said, yeah. I was like, great. Like it was, again, I don't know how geeky Mud was, but I was a huge geek.
That's great. I've heard people who've gone to Harvey Mudd and they loved it.
We were,
And they were the most unique people too.
we had a real, in hindsight, a hotspot like Joe Beta, who went
Mm.
on to do Kubernetes.
Yeah.
Uh,
You went there?
he was a couple years ahead of me. The people who founded DreamHost,
Oh, wow.
I remember when they got their computers from Fry Software
Oh,
because
gosh.
they started out of their dorm room. And Tom Preston Warner, the founder of GitHub, I didn't know him, but he was also there. So a lot of, in hindsight, really innovative companies came out of Mud.
What led you there? Like, tell me about, Edith in high school.
Oh, I was a huge geek. I graduated when I was 16. I wanted to go
You
to the
did.
best engineering school. I, it was as simple as that.
So Harvey Mudd would be considered the best.
It had this very narrow focus in STEM, but I thought it gave a very good education.
How did it set you up for the endurance of having a startup? And I know you did endurance racing at one time, and I saw this interview you did at the Traction conference with Jonathan Helliger of Vertex Partners, and I really loved it. And I know you're more into bicycling these days, but you talked about endurance, and you like took courses at Harvey Mudd, as many as you could take. You rode your bicycle to one college when they said no. You went to the next one to see if they take you. So, is endurance just something you love?
I think it's just a mindset of, if I want something, I'll think about how I can get it. With the story about colleges, I was like, I'm just going to knock on one more door.
Hmm.
Uh, with the company in the early days, it was extremely difficult. We were a new concept. Like it felt like the most innovative companies like Facebook, LinkedIn back then were already feature flagging,
Mm,
but it was something very new to a lot of other people doing software.
mm,
So I always had this saying back then of never close lost, always close later, which I took if you've ever used Salesforce, which is a customer relationship management system. If you have an opportunity in there, you have to close it if it's cold at a certain point. So you usually close it as closed lost. I always said to the team, it's just always going to be an opportunity later. Like
eh,
you might close it right now because there's just no traction with that customer. They're not going anywhere. But I bet if you talk to them in a year or two, they'll be ready. And I think that maps back to just endurance of, it's not a sprint. It's just a lot of hard work.
right. It's a lot of hard work. I'm a baseball fan, and um, Babe Ruth came up in my feed, and he said basically the same thing. He basically said that, no one's going to beat you if you never give up.
Yeah, I mean, on my bike ride across country, which was super fun, so I was by myself. It was self-supported, and there were a lot of tough days. Because you're just biking across Montana, which seems to last forever, and then you get to North Dakota.
It's like a joke.
And I love North Dakota. I mean, there would be a thunderstorm. It would be a really tough day when maybe the road wasn't very well paved, but there was always something fun in that day.
Yeah,
And I think startups are a lot like that.
yeah.
There's always something fun in the day.
Like knowing there's always something fun in the day. I mean, are you looking for that kind of spirit in people who you hire?
Uh, I'm pretty proud. We just celebrated some 6-year anniversaries of the company.
Uh-huh.
So we got our A round or our Series A in 2016, and we hired a batch of people then, and a lot of them are still with the company. So back then we went from 8 people to 16, which at the time seemed like a huge double.
Mm-hmm.
And right then we were about at 1 million, and now we're at 100 million. And I was
Mm.
extremely happy that the people that joined then, I could show a picture at our all company, and they're still here. Their roles have changed. They've matured a lot. They've grown up with the company, but they're still on that journey.
So when you're looking for people, to join to join not just your engineering management team, but now you have marketing teams and you have sales teams and you have operations teams, you know, have you found that it's more difficult to hire? Is it easier to hire? What is the sense of the market right now for you, kind of in context with that?
It's definitely different. I mean, to take you back to the heavy bit days when we were, 4 people in a co-working environment,
Hmm.
uh, it was definitely a lot of persuasion of this is going to be a game-changing company,
Hmm.
and also you're going to have fun along the way. Now we have a lot more proof points. We did an article with Forbes where we announced we're over 100 million of annual recurring revenue.
Hmm.
We have 4,000 plus customers. We talked
Hmm.
about patterns. So it is easier in some ways to recruit folks because we can point to patterns of success.
Hmm.
We could say, here's how we've already set ourselves up for success, and here's how we're going to continue to set ourselves up for success.
That's relevant. Um, where would you say you're now then in that journey? Like, you're riding your bike across across the country and you made it to North Dakota, you know, um, where are you now with LaunchDarkly?
I mean, I tell the team all the time that we're in a better position than ever. We have had extreme success with our customers. And that's one of the things that makes me very happy that when I go see a customer who's been using us, for 4, 5, 6, 7 years, they talk about that. They say how it's been a game changer for the way they develop. It's been a game changer for their developer productivity. It's been a game changer for their own happiness and their own customers. And we have 4,000 customers, but I think we should have 10x that.
Ah.
When I look at the world of software, I think we're still very, very, very early. There's still a lot to do.
Mm-hmm. So what do you think is being affected now by companies out there who are seeing Google lay off people, who are seeing Amazon lay off people? Companies very large are in the tech space are laying people off. What does that how does that affect you?
Um, of course, first I feel a lot of sympathy and empathy for the people affected.
Right.
That's hard. I've been in through the dot-com crash, the 2007 recession, and I'm very optimistic overall about just technology. Like, I think there's been multiple waves of technology. We talked about Web 1.0, Web 2.0. I'm not sure I love the term Web 3.0, but we're still in the middle of it. And I think there's still more to come there. I think innovation sometimes gets compressed or expanded, but it never stops. Like, we did a survey of 1,000 people in IT, and of those, 79% expected their IT department to increase their feature management budget, and 98% said that feature flags saved their company money, and delivered demonstrable ROI, which made me feel great. So I think innovation will continue to win, but there's going to be a lot of short-term disruption uh, with some companies funding and defunding different initiatives.
What initiatives are you starting to see that are getting defunded, and vice versa? What ones are getting kept?
Well, I'll just use a very public example. Southwest just very recently had a massive meltdown, which affected millions of Americans because they defunded IT. Like, they said, hey, we need to defund IT. We're going to focus just on pilots and planes. And then they had a meltdown over the Christmas holidays because there was a weather issue, which is understandable. And then their software wasn't equipped to redirect all the planes and the pilots to the right place, which I viewed as a huge tragedy. It's like they had the hardware, they didn't have the software. So I viewed that as them them making what they thought was the right decision of defunding a project for crew scheduling that ultimately very much hurt them, hurt their business, hurt their customers.
That's really interesting. I have a last question for you. Going back to your first days and your interest in engineering, and as a high schooler, I don't know if it was before that, but what was the first experience you had with programming?
Oh gosh, I learned. So I was an extremely nerdy kid. I would finish all my worksheets when I was in second grade. I would get kicked out to the library because otherwise I was just sitting there.
Mm.
And I played a ton of Carmen Sandiego. I played a ton of Oregon Trail.
Yeah.
And I got to the last level and I was like, okay, I can't do any more Oregon Trail. And I taught myself basic then. Because
Oh, nice.
yeah, I didn't have an instructor.
How did you discover BASIC?
Well, because I had this computer in the library and they have all the icons and
Ah.
I ask me where Carmen Sandiego is and I'll tell you in a heartbeat. And I'd gone through that. I was like, okay, the only thing left here is basic. And so I taught myself basic. And then I went on and I taught little kids how to program logo. And I just found it fascinating that you could make something work.
Then you went into enterprise development right out of school. You went into the developer world. You started a LaunchDarkly in 2014. 2022 is here. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? Continuing to build LaunchDarkly? Do you have is there any kind of other dream you have for yourself?
Well, first it's 2023, isn't it?
Edith. Yes, it is.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. I still, what is it? The checks. I heard this on a NPR show. Like the guy's like, yeah, I still write my checks. I'm like, you write checks, but he said with 2022. But in any case, yeah. So like, is there anything else in your life that you really would love to try or love to do?
Um, I think LaunchDarkly is just at its very beginning.
Yeah,
As I said, I talk to our customers and how much it's changed their lives, and then I think about all the customers that we don't have yet that could be having a better software release, and I want to help them.
that sounds like a nice way to end the interview. Thank you so much, Edith. I've been joined today for our Tech Founder Odyssey interviews. Edith Harbaugh, thank you. You're a inspiration to a lot of people for what you've done and building something quite unique. And all the best of luck in the continue building out of your business.
Thank you for having me.
If you like this video, please give us a thumbs up. And if you'd like to see more videos like this, you can always subscribe to our YouTube channel. We're on all the major social media platforms. You can always find us at thenewstack.io. We hope to see you soon.